Good morning and welcome to Real Conversations with Dr. Anita. I am your host, Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, and I cannot tell you how thrilled and excited I am to be talking with our guest today, Dr. Cheree Montgomery. Welcome, Dr. Cheree.
Hi, how are you? It's
I
great to
am
be on your
blessed.
show this
I am
morning.
so glad to have you back. We've been trying to make this happen for a little while. And before we get
Yeah,
into it, I just want to set the stage for our listeners. Now, this month, we've been following the thread around Kanye West's decision to run for president. And if you've
yes,
listened to the first two podcasts that I did with my Insanity Check crew, in our first discussion, we were just kind of talking about what was going on in his inner circle. And in the second discussion, my crew and I talked about how it is that we can help people if we're part of someone else's inner circle, or how it is that others can help us that are part of our inner circle. Today, I want to focus on Dr. Cheree, and she is going to explain to us what someone who has bipolar disorder, as we know Mr. West has, what their life is like for their inner circle. Now, I want to make this very, very plain. We are not here to bash Mr. West. And I will say from a personal note that when he first came out with his gospel album, he got a lot of hate, and that's not cool, especially from people who claim to be Christians. We need to
yes,
always remember only God can judge the heart, and what looks crazy on the outside to us, we don't know what someone's processing internally.
yes,
And that's what we're
yes.
discussing this morning, and that is why this is such an important conversation. And because it's such an important conversation, I wanted to reach out to someone that I consider to be a subject matter expert, our mental health advocate, Dr. Cheree Montgomery. So, Dr. Cheree, again, thank you for working with my schedule to get you back. I so appreciate you.
No problem. I understand a busy schedule. Definitely. So it is a
Yeah,
pleasure to be here this morning.
thank
It
you.
really,
So I know that you have your own radio program and in fact focuses on mental health and wellness in the Black community. Before I get into my questions, tell us a little bit about your show, how we can find you, and when we can listen in.
yes. Hi. I'm currently doing because of the pandemic. I haven't been recording as much as I have during this time period, but you can find me on More Radio. I periodically have been doing things through the pandemic. My radio talk show is called Mindful Soul Talk. That is birthed from all the things I've went through with my son and me becoming more of an advocate for speaking about mental health in the Black community with such a negative impact that that mental health has played on our community, being that it's such a stigma.
Mhm.
I decided that I wanted to reach out to our community and be a voice because I have a lot to offer. Being an educator, a mother who has a son that's dealing with mental illness, and also friends and families that I found that have been suffering in silence for so long. And I
Mhm.
said, I want God to use me in a way that I can open doors and I can also feel comfortable and help is telling my own story and having others tell theirs. And what a better way to do that is through a podcast or radio broadcast.
Absolutely, where you can reach more voices with a message that
Yes,
needs to be heard.
yes.
So, thank you very
Um,
much for sharing your expertise with us. Before we go any further, I want to alert our listeners to the fact that it is not you. You know, technology these days, while it's wonderful, it's not always reliable. So, we're just going to ask you to bear with us and just stay with the conversation. It's not
yes.
your system, most likely. So, just bear with us. We are doing this remotely, but I'm so glad to have Dr. Cheree with us. So before I start to ask you questions that might be more on a personal level about your own journey concerning mental health and wellness, I want to go back to Kanye West, his bid for presidency, and speaking to you as a mental health advocate. And I made it clear on my prior two shows that myself and my crew, we're not experts, but we're looking at it from a very high level view from people on the outside
Yes.
looking in, thinking, where is his team of advisors to tell him that this might not be the best thing to think about? And then we took the conversation another level in terms of our own selves. When have we made decisions that our inner circle might have advised us to, to do something differently? And now I want to bring it down to the level of someone who is very intimate with what the process looks like as someone in the inner circle of someone who is suffering with bipolar disorder. So when we talk about Kanye West bid for president, right away I'm thinking, is this crazy or is it just me? So give us a little bit of what that might have looked like for his inner circle to either say or not say, not quite sure this is the right thing.
Being that he's Kanye West, I think a lot of people were shocked with that, him saying, I'm going to run for president. But a lot of times, with you're dealing with a person with a bipolar disorder, they sometimes don't live in reality. But they also, some of them, well, let me say, the person, sometimes you're looking at at the person, but when we're talking about some of it is Kanye West, and some of it is him dealing with his mental illness. What's saying is some of it is that he believes that he can do great things. He believes that he can run for president, um, but also we as people know that that is kind of very out there for him to think that he can run for president. And you
So,
can
so
have
let me interrupt you real quickly and confirm. So he thinks that he can do anything, and we know that he's a musical genius. Is some of his self-confidence in thinking he can run for president stemming from the fact that he is unquestionably a musical genius?
Yes. And
Okay.
so they get this complex or thing that feeling that they can do anything,
Mm-hmm.
empowered. I know for my son, I'm like, how are you going to be able to do that? Because you're not living in, you can see it in reality saying that kind of seems impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure many of his people have advised him, well, I mean, do you think you should be doing that or you should
Mm-hmm.
not? But the stubbornness and his eager to say I'm Kanye West is
Mm-hmm.
going to go against that. Even if it's almost like talking to two people, he's going to
Okay.
say no, I can do it. Because they're dealing with that ego of him saying that I'm the greatest, I'm the best, because it's something that comes over sometimes when you deal with mental illness that they feel like they're Superman, they can do anything.
So when you say it's almost talking like two different people, when do you talk to the person that is reasonable? And when you can talk to that person that's reasonable, does that conversation kind of go out the window when the genius comes in that says, I can do anything? Do they forget that conversation?
Well, I've been dealing with so long. It's like I'm talking when they're calm. You try to bring them back into reality,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes they're out. Well, I'm going to fly to space. And I'm like, well, okay, you don't have experience in flying to space, so how are you going to get there? I'm giving
Mm-hmm.
that an example. And you go, well, you need training. You need, let alone the education knowledge to be able to fly to space. You can't just fly to space. But
Mm-hmm.
Kanye could be saying, I'm going to fly to space. And
Mm-hmm.
we're back saying, there's no way that Kanye is going to fly to space.
Mm-hmm.
So you're actually trying to get them into reality. You're talking to them constantly, telling them that's impossible. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, they're arguing back with you, saying, yes, I'm going to fly to space. And
Okay.
so you have to sometimes bring them back to reality and show them you need this, you need
Mm-hmm.
this, you need this. Do you have these things to get there? Do you have the skills? Do you have the political background, Kanye, to run for president? The country already looks. And so people probably already have been debating these things with him, but he's like,
Right.
yeah, I can. Look at him. Look at what Trump's doing. I can probably outdo Trump
There you
because
go.
of the people I know and the influence that I have with
Mm-hmm.
my music. Just like you didn't believe that I could do a gospel group. I know, in fact, that I can because I did it. No matter what the naysayer said, I
Mm-hmm.
did it. So that just fed into the ego and all the things that he's going on mentally once
Okay.
he's decided, an example of that.
So then let me ask you this. Now that you've given us a glimpse, and I'm going to say this several times throughout the discussion, we are not in any way trying to bash or analyze Kanye. We're trying
No,
to
not at
get
all.
a grounding on what this looks like
Uh-huh.
from the inside in case you at home may be dealing with this situation yourself. So, Dr.
Yeah.
Cheree, now that you explained to us how it might look from Kanye's perspective, I can do anything. How does it look
Yeah.
from the perspective of someone on the inner circle of someone who loves someone with bipolar disorder? How does this show up for you as someone in the inner circle for your son?
it drives you crazy. It's very
Yeah.
stressful
Hmm.
because you're trying to talk this person that they're not in reality. But you got to continue to try to talk to them and hoping that a light bulb will come on and it'll
Hmm.
click and they'll go, oh, maybe she is right.
Hmm.
But chances are it may not happen. There's many
Okay.
times that I've debated about situations that my son I thought was ridiculous. I use him as an example all the time. And I'm going, you can possibly do that. Love him dearly.
Hmm.
But when when he's not in that form of reality, I'm sitting there debating, stressed. Oh, is he going to embarrass me? Is he going to do these kind of things? Because it can lead to embarrassment on a embarrassment meaning on the parent, on the loved one, because you're watching them and you don't even want to say make a fool of themselves. But I have to say, you're like, okay, I know that wasn't going to work, but chances are you're going to try because you're going to allow yourself to take control over the situation and do it no matter what. Because before there's mental illness, there is a person that
Yes.
has their own personality. So when
Yes.
I get a disorder, I'm still the same person. I'm going to think and do. So sometimes it's a disorder and sometimes it's you. And so you're constantly going back and forth with these people that the person that has these two complex personalities going on. One is unmedicated, that's saying, I can do anything. I'm flying to space next week. Okay. I never knew that you wanted to go to space. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you're constantly, and some people may even find it humorous. Some people may even find it, but when you're on the other side of it, it's
Right.
sometimes painful because you're going, there's no way he's going to space. But he's telling me he's leaving and he's going to space next week. And so I have to use it because it can be that outlandish where they're saying that they're going to space. It can be that far fetched and they believe it and with all their heart, their body and spirit. But you're, as a loved one, sitting back going, he can't go to space. You don't even have a spaceship, and so
Mhm.
you're constantly going back and forth. And it's very stressful. Like Kim Kardashian, I'm sure she has spent nights, hours, days saying, Kanye, don't do that because, publicity, the people, they're going to lash back. I'm sure people have advised him, but he still continues on that way. He doesn't care because it's mostly the disorder that's coming out. You just feel that you can do it. So,
So
you're the one that don't believe in it because a lot of times it's this thing where they don't believe that you believe in them. Does that make sense? Saying that
it does.
you
It does. And so,
can't.
as his mother, and I know that you and your husband Tony had three boys. So
uh,
you've given us an insight into how it affects you as his mother. How did it affect his brothers and the family dynamic? What did that look like?
it was very stressful because they said, he's talking about this, he's doing this, because you get where you're uncomfortable. You see your loved one that's doing things that are not. I don't know. I through this illness, I stopped saying what is normal and what's not normal. I'm
Mhm.
saying you see these behaviors that you're concerned about. You talk them, you discuss them, and and it's very stressful on the whole entire family, from
Mhm.
loved ones to kids. Just to think about, and I pray that they keep the media around because media itself, when you don't have a disorder, when you're not struggling, can be cruel. And
Absolutely.
so, and it can be hurtful to any family that's in the limelight. I'm not even in the limelight of
Mhm.
being a successful singer like Kanye West or Kim Kardashian. But for them to go through that and be more open to the public's eye, I'm sure it's even another layer that I can't even imagine that they go through to watch your loved one, because eyes are always, there's always a paparazzi looking at you. There's always someone. So why is he wearing that dress? Why is he wearing his clothes backwards? Why did Kanye say he was going to be president? It's always them looking at them. And having to make excuses for their loved ones. And it becomes even where you're making up excuses.
And
Well,
so when
we'll
the
do this.
family feels like they're in that position, then how does that affect their own mental wellness?
Stressful. Probably, it wouldn't doubt me if you're going to seek out counseling yourself to deal with
Mhm.
someone that has a disorder, because it puts that amount of stress on you. And sometimes it's a shame behind it. You don't know what to say. You don't
Mhm.
know how that person, every day, it's like you're walking on eggshells.
Mhm.
And when you're dealing with someone that's not medicated and dealing with the bipolar. So I'm sure Kim, the whole entire family, if the extension of the family are walking when he's in that period, they're walking on eggshells, because you never know what is going to come across his mind, how he's going to react to certain things, what he's going to do, what's going to trigger him, what's going to make him irritated, what's going to make him say something that they are going to even be shocked about. You try to keep, and I'm sure they try to keep him away when
Mhm.
he's going through that, but he's stubborn probably and combative and saying, I'm going to do it anyway. You don't own me. I'm who I am. I'm Kanye West. And so you go through that
So you
a
mentioned a
lot.
couple of things. I'm taking notes as you're talking because I had wanted to take the conversation in a different direction, but because it is called Real Conversations, we're just going to roll with the flow. So I want to ask you one thing before I go to two more points. You mentioned the fact that family members of people with bipolar disorder, it's so stressful for them that they probably would do well to find some mental help for themselves. Have
Yes.
you and your family actually done that for yourselves? Do you go to
Oh,
group
yeah.
counseling? Does everyone go individually? What does that look like?
I went with my son all the way, stepped through it, because I wanted to know what was going on. I was blessed to have a psychiatrist and therapist that worked with me with my son. The benefits of that is that they would say, okay, let me talk to your mom after they've talked to him. He's an adult. A lot of places don't do that, and they would sit down and tell me some of the things that are going on, what kind of medications, what is going on, what you may see, what are you seeing at home versus what he's sitting and telling me. And I would be able to share that. I took my journey with my son because a lot of times it's so stressful, people run. People
Mhm.
don't want to deal with that individual because it takes a strong person to deal with someone with mental illness. And I found that through the dealing with my son and how many people. So I was blessed to have a girlfriend, and I call her my guiding angel, that helped me walk through the
Mhm.
process because her son went through it. And I don't know if I would have made it through without her. But it wasn't my mate. It wasn't my kids, because they were so much in pain to watch the devastation of what their brother was going through with a mental illness, that they were too much in pain, which they needed help and they needed to get, it took them. I'm at a different level because I walked through the steps, went through
Mhm.
the therapy, understood it, and did a lot of research because I'm a mother that never gives up. I'm going
I
to
know you
find a
are. I know you
solution.
are.
I'm going to find the answers. And so even if, sometimes I failed, I kept pushing. And then there becomes the mother of protection that you have over your children. And so you do those kind of things. So I'm the mother that, there's been times my son has said, you guys don't love me, I'm running away. And has packed up all his stuff and trying to leave. And I'm the mother that's running behind him saying, no, we're going to fix it. We're going to make it better. What can we do? But at the same time, he was determined. And I can remember one night he was determined that he was going to live on the streets. And because he didn't feel like the world was accepting him. And he goes through that too. You're not accepting me for who I am. I'm sure Kanye goes, something about bipolar. You're not accepting me for who I am. I'm running for president. My son is his that, I can do great things, because he goes back and forth. I'm supposed to have been in the NBA because he was a great basketball star. But things happen where this happened to him, and it kind of hindered him from going forth. But if he would have caught it sooner enough, he probably could have been on that same journey. But sometimes it's crippling to that individual, and it takes
Let me
them a
interrupt
lot
you. Let me ask you this question. I want to go back to the family dynamics because there's so many things that I want to ask you that I want to make
Okay.
sure we touch on a various different aspects of this for who's ever listening so that we can speak to wherever they might be.
Yeah.
And so we're now talking about the family dynamics. I want to ask you, because typically men, and I'm generalizing here right now, audience, but typically men are not known to be the most outwardly emotional. And when we talk about men of color in particular, they like to hold stuff close to the vest. So what did your husband do? What was his reaction, and how did he reach out to get some sense of wellness for himself? Did he deal with this well? Did he not? And the reason I'm asking, not to put you on the spot, Dr. Cheree, but you did tell me that I could ask you anything, is because typically men don't think about their own wellness. They'd rather ignore something than deal with it. So how did your mate deal with this at the time, and how is he still dealing with it?
I think you somewhat, you deal with the own way you want. I can't speak for his father's journey through what he went through emotionally. I'm sure it was a lot of, praying and understanding, but that a lot of men don't believe that a therapist route.
Right.
I can't say that he went to a therapist. I really can't tell you. What I can tell you is about what my journey was. And my journey, basically, because it's been me and my son's journey. You know what I'm saying? Even though there's other family members, but a lot of people, and I've had advocates like my girlfriends that have stood when I needed someone in the middle of the night.
And
Because a lot of
advocacy is absolutely important. But in
yeah,
your
and
search to
friendship.
find help
Yeah.
for yourself, what did you find in the landscape of Black psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors that could help you from a Black perspective? Not to say that any other perspective won't help, but we know that there's something we need to know that you understand my perspective, not just from a clinical standpoint, but from the standpoint of being Black in America. Were you able to find that type of help for yourself and your son?
And yes, and it was not easy. It
Tell us
started
about
out with a journey that I knew that I was determined because of the age of my son and him being a Black African American male. I wanted to make sure that I had the people in place that I felt that could help him and understand him. And so I did a lot of research, and I was blessed to find a psychiatrist close to where I live. I met him, and just like I thought, because I had experience where he was with a psychiatrist of a different nationality that did not understand him. Oh, you like rap music? What is
right,
rap music?
right.
And versus when we met the new psychiatrist. Oh, you listen to, oh, okay, you into Nipsey Hussle? Oh, me too. Wait. And it was my son, oh, you like Nipsey Hussle? And it brought him to feel comfortable. Wait a minute, I'm feeling comfortable right now.
Yes, yes.
I can, okay. And oh, did you listen to this? Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. And maybe he did, but because he said he knew him and knew a couple of lyrics and
Right.
felt comfortable, then he would say, yeah, I don't mind listening to you for this hour, 45 minutes, and talking to you about my medication because you can relate. You understand me.
Exactly. And I want to interrupt you right there because, again, we're not saying that skilled people in the field of mental health are not helpful. But when you find someone that you can relate to, that understands where you're coming from and your worldview, that is what makes it so critical to be able to have more doctors in the field that are Black, that can help our Black people. So again, not disrespecting any other race, but Dr. Cheree just said a different nationality could not connect with her son. And that's important to me.
And she had this little voice, and she was very cute woman, very polite. But I just knew it wasn't the dynamics of the match it didn't correlate. And
Right.
the same with me, because of my education background, my knowledge base. I needed a woman that could come with it. So when I found
Absolutely.
my therapist, she was like, listen here,
Right.
and she gave me the mother, then she gave me the sister, then she gave me, girl, you need to,
Right.
and it felt like two girlfriends sipping coffee,
Yes.
talking about
Yes.
their problems. But at the same time, she would end with telling me, if you don't get this straight, one time she told me, you either piss or get off the pot, and, but that kind of stuff. I could think back, but every time I was going through something with my son, I could relate to her saying these, cute little things that made me say, you know what, I could laugh about it, because while I'm going through all this pain, I'm thinking
Yes.
about her. What did she tell me about Jay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I shouldn't do this. And, but through this, let me tell you about the weight. I think about families that even Kanye's family may go through. It's a very heavy weight.
Mm.
Because you feel like you're carrying it. They have it, but you can also feel like you're carrying the weight
Mm-hmm.
as a mother too, because you want to be the protector. You want
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that, okay, are they taking their medication? And I found myself, I would stare at my son, and even when, and he would go, what are you looking at? Because I needed to know, that's the motherhood in you, and you kind of looking, and but at the same time I was making him feel awkward, but I was feeling like, oh, I'm just want to make sure, what's going to trigger him today, what's going
Right.
to agitate, especially when you're trying to balance medication. And when I started to listen more, I was sitting up there forcing medication, take your medication, take your medication. Then I had to back off, because then we start having conversations about medications.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we're saying if they take their medication, they'll be okay. That's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily so. Some medications do not help. They kind of make it subdued. They kind of lower the levels of it. But let's say they're hearing voices. The voices don't ever stop with the
Mm-hmm.
medication.
Mm.
They're still constantly hearing negative thoughts or things that are going on in their head.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me a lot of research and going to a forensic psychiatrist to understand and to even hear what my son was hearing in his head. So you're constantly hearing negative things. It's just like
Mm.
every day we wake up, we put on our makeup, and we give compliments and stuff like that. And that alter ego, that person could be saying, you're nothing. Look at you. You're dealing with this mental illness. You're never going to get over it. Just believe, it's just constantly dark. It's constantly this negative cloud over their head. And some of the medicine creates more kinds of complications. You have to take other medications to counteract other medications. Lack of sleep. Sometimes you need things to help you sleep, because medication will keep you up all night.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many dynamics to it. We've tried many medications, and then sometimes you become immune, where
Mm-hmm.
after 7 years you've been on a certain medication, you need something else. You may need a higher dosage. So that's why you have to constantly stay with the doctor, understand the therapist, understand the doctor, because they work together. When I first started, I would say, okay, you just need the medication. Didn't understand the value of the therapist and how important her role was, because only thing the doctor is really doing is talking about the medication. How does the medication make you feel? He's giving you a medication, but the therapist is how you get coping skills.
Right.
And
Right.
you need those coping skills. And especially when you're dealing with a person with mental illness and him himself, learning how to cope and how to deal. When you do hear those things, what are your triggers? How can you do things to prevent those things from happening?
Now, I want to
Now, I
explore
want to
two more
explore
areas
two more
with
areas
you
with you.
before
Yeah.
we wrap up this
Before we wrap up this.
conversation. And I'm hearing some feedback. Okay, there you go. The first thing I want to ask you is your son able to live independently? And if so, what does that look like for him?
We've I, I he's had several situations where he was independent with someone in different programs. He started out in programs that are wraparound services, which was very hard. I had to let go
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted him to grow independent of me because mommy or mother or family may not always be around. So he was
Right.
in some top programs and dealing with, because another thing happens is we're not just dealing with them. They use self coping skills, and sometimes that goes into drug addiction and
Mm-hmm.
drug behaviors, because they one of the things, they think that marijuana helps with mental illness, or they think other things, because they just want, if you have someone nagging at you all the time in your head,
They just
this
want
is
to
what they're
leave.
saying, you just
Mm-hmm.
want them to leave.
Yeah.
And so let me bear it, let me go on this fake high or get high so that I can mask it and I don't have to think about this person. Just like it's like someone's tapping on your brain all the time, and
Mm.
that, and you're going like, please stop, please stop, please stop, and you can't get anything else done because you're constantly have this person beating on your brain, breathing on your
Mm.
brain. So learning that, we battle with that kind of thing as well. He's has stayed on his end where I prayed for people to help him independently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he doesn't like to be alone. And he's had roommates, and then he likes to drown out. He's very musical, so he
Like your
likes
father.
to
Yeah.
make, yeah, he likes to make music, and he also likes to draw and do things. He's a great artist.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll find there is a correlation between people that are have a lot of talents or a high IQ. His IQ is very, very high,
Mm-hmm.
which is very, don't think because they got mental illness, oh, they're no. Most of the people, we're talking doctor and lawyers and that also deal with being that have mental disorders, but they're
Mm-hmm.
medicating themselves and functioning.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a point where you're not functioning. That's why I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying they could be so gifted, like Kanye West, how gifted he is and talented. Oh, he got a disorder, so I want to make that clear because I've met some fantastic people that deal with it, but they're managing it and they're doing successful in it. And that's the things I try to put in front of my son. You can have this, but you can't stay in the self-pity role. Oh, I'm never going to get over this. I mean, you have to work hard at it, and it takes a lot of weightlifting, therapy, psychiatrists, talking out, going to these sessions, group sessions. So I put all that before him. Some he's done good at, some he has not. Independently, he probably can, but it's still someone that has to help him and make sure, because when he falls short, when he decides that day he's not going to do his medication, when
Mm-hmm.
and he's not eating, he's staying up all night. Someone needs to be sure that he's staying on track and getting back on track. And
So the
so I've
last
been. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't
the,
mean to cut you off.
the last area that I want to explore with you is how are you managing your own self-care? Because the areas that you have shared with us today have gone far beyond anything that I even thought I knew about the dynamics associated with someone with bipolar disorder, from their own internal challenges to the challenges of those in their inner circle. And as one who's in his inner circle, as his mother, his advocate, what does self care look like for you?
I would say if it wasn't for God, where would I be? Because I always put Him first. A lot of prayer. It has been a painful road,
Mm-hmm.
but it isn't a road that I have stayed in. I kept a lot. I'm currently writing a book, and it's going to be out probably by September. And it's called "Don't Give Up," and it's a resource guide for African Americans that deal with depression and mental health with a family or a loved one. And boy, it's going to change lives because it really goes into my story, and it goes into how I persevered over certain things. It has not been an easy road for me, but through faith, through therapy, to doing my talk show, radio talk show, to writing what's going on. I journaled a lot of things. I took videos. I'm currently in the process of working with a couple of friends doing a documentary on mental health with young and
Wow.
African American people. And I have my fingers crossed that I get this grant because through this, something was birthed through me, though.
Mhm.
Sometimes you think your purpose is one thing, and God will show you a different purpose. Because through this, I've met so many people that are going through that, have hidden
Mhm.
it. I was one that said, "Oh, I want the perfect family. I have 3 sons. Everyone's going to go to college. Just going to be like that." And everyone dreams of having those kind of things. And then I'll never forget it. He's 18. I get a phone call in the middle of the night, and that's when our road began. And it's told in my book on how did not see it coming because the night before I was talking to UCLA and talking about how we're going to get him to play for UCLA and be a great basketball star. Scouts coming to my house, and it just hit us and impacted my life so and his that it rerouted us. But I do feel that God set me out for a course through every tragedy. I always say there's something dynamic that sometimes comes out, and
Right.
mine has been this because through this I realized how many people that I can help by sharing my story because often that is a stigma that is you would hear that and back in the day I can remember family members, you go to their house and aunties and you would have an uncle or something that's struggling with something. We didn't know what it was, but they'll say just leave him alone, just leave him alone because he crazy. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? What does
Right.
that look like,
Right.
and so, but I can remember as a little girl, people or even friends, and we'll go over their house. Oh, that's my uncle. He got his issues and things of that nature, and we would say, okay, and we'll leave him alone. And if he start acting a little wild, then everybody will get quiet in the house. But we never dealt with mental illness.
Right.
And so now it's the time because, and also through life, I had a couple of friends that committed suicide and
Mhm.
everybody was and recently I had a older person that I went to school with that was a couple classes ahead of me. She committed suicide. Um, and and it's just I said something has to be done
Mhm.
that we suffer and we put these masks on.
Yes.
Everything is a mask. Oh, I got the perfect marriage. Oh,
Yes.
and Facebook and social media has even made it even harder to know the
Mhm.
truth. And
Mhm.
you're like, well, he was just on Facebook happy. And what do you mean he killed himself? And
I know.
so, and I'm being real. And I've learned so many things about fakeness and not being real and it has hindered some families, it hindered certain things, but authenticity has been a lead to me as well. Finding that I'm going to share my story, I'm not going to cover it up, and I had even had to, on my job, and let me go with the mental struggles of that because and people wonder why I plateaued into entrepreneurship and God has taken me to a new level because I was over 22 schools in a district. I was over the principals, the teachers. I literally in one day I can get 200 emails. I'm working programs. I'm doing all that on my way, thinking, oh, I'm going to be the next superintendent. I'm going to be this and that. And so I worked my way through all my education, my experiences. It was right there. I even had interviews for superintendent and stuff like that. But in the meantime, a lot of things were going through with my son, and I had to make choices. And see, they didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to hear, oh, I didn't get that report done because my son had me up to 2 and 3 in the morning. So people don't share that, how it impacts you as far as mental on your job and stuff. And you're thinking at home, you're like, okay, what can I do for my son? And so you're sneakily researching at work. when you should be working on a report. You're doing this and you have all these. My calendar full with, I have to go speak at this school. I have to do a training at this school. I have to make sure the teachers are right. And inside, I'm crumbling. I got to put on a face,
Right.
that face. And as an African American woman, they expect you to be there 100%. There
Yes.
is no 70, okay? Because then they're looking at you with a side eye going,
Right.
oh, wait a minute.
Right.
No, you're going to
Right.
show me that you deserve this position. And
Mm-hmm.
so I battled with that. And I had to say, okay, family, love, everything, and I had to try to come to face reality. And I said, I went out for an assistant superintendent's job. This is real conversations. And I didn't get it. And I said, you know what? I need a change. And I kept on saying, is it a district? What is it? I've been at this district for 5 or 6 years. And I said, I always said I wanted my own things, and it gave me the opportunity. So I decided to open my own school. I decided to start doing my own things as an entrepreneur. That gave me more time to focus on self-love and self-care.
So it sounds like part of your journey to self-love and self-care was having a strong sister circle, was getting the
Yes,
mental health care that you needed, and maybe
yes,
taking yourself off of a career wheel that was so demanding that you
yes,
decided to go into entrepreneurship, which has its own demands. This I know,
yes.
but it
Oh, yeah.
allowed you to really integrate yourself and still being able to advocate and care for your son. And Dr. Cheree, with everything that you've got going on, I just want to thank you so much for coming on to the show today. This show is
Yes,
called Real Conversations with Dr. Anita because
yes. I hope
that's
it was real
exactly what this was. That is
enough.
exactly what this was a real conversation. And to my
Yes,
listening audience, I want to thank you for staying with us through a little bit of the internet ins and outs, and with the time delay. Sometimes I thought she was finished, so I jump in with my next question. So Dr. Cheree,
no,
forgive
it's
me if I
okay.
seemed
It's
I was
hard
being
doing
rude. There was
the
so
internet.
much that I wanted to cover today, and this conversation has been so eye-opening, and I have no doubt that the listening audience is going to glean something from this conversation that is going to speak right to where they are in their own journey. And I want to say again before I sign off, and I'm sure you got this throughout the conversation, but in case you didn't, this was not about coming down on Mr. Kanye West for his bid for presidency. It was about understanding where that's coming from, what that dynamic looks like for him as an individual, for those in his inner circle, and all of the extenuating circumstances that may touch. And so I hope, listeners, that you were able to personally take something away from this conversation. Dr. Cheree, thank you so much for sharing your personal journey with us. Before I let you go, tell us one more time how we can catch your radio show. And I know it's intermittent right now due to COVID, but
Yeah.
tell us one more time how we can catch your show.
We're on Facebook as well, but it's called More Radio. I also have a website called mindfulsoultalk.com, and you can catch me there, or you can always reach out to me under Mindful Soul, www.mindfulsoul.com. And anytime you can find me I'm on Facebook as well under Mindful Soul Talk Show. So please reach out if any of you want to, and look for my book that's coming out shortly. It's because it will be very insightful on how to deal with a loved one with mental illness.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Cheree. Now, remember, you can catch this broadcast and my other broadcasts that focused on this topic throughout the month at my YouTube channel, Dr. Anita, PhD. You have to spell it out, DoctoRanita, PhD. That's my YouTube channel. And you can see this and all of the other podcasts that we have available. I want to thank you so much for listening. Again, thank you to my subject matter expert, Dr. Cheree Montgomery, an advocate in mental health in the Black community. And this has been a real conversation. Until the next time, this is Dr. Anita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.
Amen. Amen.